should make it work. So this is what you should be seeing. So let me make a few housekeeping announcements. So the first one is for every lecture, you can follow along through the training portal. So everything that your instructor is going to show on the screen, you can follow along. It's going to be exactly the same guide. So today's guide is this one. The other thing is that while we're in this live session, if you have any comments, questions, maybe things that you want to give to the class, you can use the live chat channel. So hashtag live chat. That's the chat that I'm going to be monitoring. So if you send me a private message or you put it elsewhere, that's fine, but I'm not going to see it live. So this is the one that I'm looking live to make sure that I'm addressing all the questions. And also the other advantage of putting your comments and questions there is that if by any chance I don't see your question and I don't address it live, one of your TAs can go and answer that question. So it's not gonna go unanswered. Someone will answer your question. That being said, there's also no stupid questions. Please ask as many questions as you want. If you have a question, probably other people will have the same question as well. So you do a favor by asking your question. So don't hold back. Another thing, we usually have a very small break, like on top of the hour, depending how the lecture is going. So it's not always going to be exactly at 1 p.m., but approximately at 1 p.m., depending how the lecture is going. So a small break there. All these lectures are being recorded, so that's probably not going to be the case for today, but later on in some lectures, it's going to feel like we're covering a little bit too much because there's so much content that we have to go through. So don't worry, you can always go back and watch the recording in case you missed something. Probably not today because today is just the introduction, but just so you know. The other thing that I was going to say is that in the past, some fellows, what they have told us it works well for them is to have multiple screens because you have your Zoom call and you also have either your training portal or where you're working. Like if we're working on Excel, you have Excel open or whatever it is. If you don't have two screens, that's fine. That's not a problem. Maybe you can just put on half of the screen the training portal or whatever you're working on, and then on the other half, the Zoom call. And if you have more screens, then you can just use several screens. A screen could be anything. Could be like your phone screen could be an additional screen. Maybe you take the Zoom call from there if you have a tablet. So you can get creative, but it's always a good recommendation to have the Zoom call and the training portal or the tool that we're working with. Just you don't have to do it that way. You can do it however you want. That's just advice. All right, cool. So let me check the chat, see how we are doing. All right. Okay, cool. Awesome. So I'm gonna start soon. I think everyone should be here. So maybe let me know in the chat with a thumbs up if you're here. If you're here or with the PDF, whichever one that you want. And if you have any issues, let us know in either the live chat or extra help so we can get to you. All right, awesome. Thank you for all those thumbs up. Fantastic. So it seems like everyone is there. So really good job, everyone. So let's start with our first lecture, data literacy. So I'm going to introduce you to one of my friends. So this is my friend. His name is Minact. So Minact, we don't have a picture of him because when he existed, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no TikTok. So the only record that we have of him is this statue, and he lived approximately 3,500 years ago. That's a really, really, really long time. So he must have done something really important such that we know about him nowadays, even though he lived thousands of years ago. So what did he do that was so important? So for much of human history, most of the population didn't know how to read or write. Therefore, everything that we know from ancient civilizations was produced by a tiny, tiny minority of highly educated people called scribes. So our friend here, Minacht, he was a scribe. And a scribe was just a person that was specialized in writing and reading. So not everyone knew how to write and read. Only a few selected people knew how to do that. And thanks to them, we know about ancient civilizations that we wouldn't be able to know otherwise. And they also hold a lot of power because they were able to control knowledge, control communications. So not only they were very admired, such that the statues were built for them, they were also very, very powerful. So nowadays, if you know how to read and write, nobody's going to build a statue for you because most people know how to read and write. In fact, 86% of the people of the world know how to read and write. And the figure is even higher for developed countries. In developed countries, this number is virtually 100%. And this is really good for us as a society, because imagine if you had to hire a scribe every time you needed to send an email. You can't send an email on your own. You will have to hire a scribe. That would be terrible. Or if you need to go to the groceries and then do groceries, and then you have a shopping list, right? And you would need to hire a scribe to do this shopping list for you, or maybe understand what the newspaper is saying. So it would be really inconvenient if we didn't know how to read and write. But we do know how to read and write. But it turns out that in this modern day, data literacy is becoming the new literacy. So it's not enough to know how to read and write. You also need to know how to work with data. In fact, I have here a nice infographic that I wanted to show you. Let me send that in the chat in case people want that infographic. So I just sent that in the chat. But basically, this is how much data was produced every minute in 2024. So in the year that we just finished. So for example, if you notice, there's 5.9 million Google searches every minute of the day. There's 18, almost 19 million text messages being sent every day. There's, let's see, 1.4 million messages being sent on Slack. So there's a lot of data in our world. And if we know how to work with this data, we will have as much power as scribes in previous societies. For example, nowadays, scientists can look at what people were Googling in different cities when the pandemic was happening. And they're able to determine much better when COVID arrived to a city rather than waiting until the first person tested positive, just based on people's Google searches. People would start searching how to deal with cough. I have a fever. What do I do? What's the best medicine for a runny nose? And just because all these searches increased, you could tell that COVID had arrived to that city. So the power of data is really, really big. So data literacy is the new literacy. Unfortunately, not a lot of people know how to work with data, even though it's so important in the world nowadays. Not a lot of people know how to read a bar chart. Not a lot of people know how to read a line chart, a frequency table. But being able to do so is going to give you a superpower. I have an example actually. So many years ago, there were elections in my country, and I was watching the news, and I feel like knowing data, knowing how to understand data is almost like a superpower, because now I understand what people are saying, and I can have critical thinking and determine whether I'm being told the truth or not. So in my country, there were elections, presidential elections, like in every country. And there was candidate A, let's say, and candidate B for the presidency. And this news channel was saying, well, candidate B is absolutely destroying candidate A. And the bar chart they had was something like this. So you have your bar chart. Here it would start at 50. And then here it would be, let's say, 51. And here it would be 52. And let's say this is the number of votes. And here will be candidate A, and then here will be candidate B. So the news channel was saying like, candidate B is absolutely destroying candidate A. But if you notice, because you know data, you will know data, you'll learn how to read different data visualizations. Here it starts at 50. So in reality, if we started this bar plot, like a normal bar plot on 0, what it would look like would be something like this. So it would be 0 here, 50 here, and then candidate A would be here, and then candidate B would be here. So candidate B only had a small advantage over candidate A. It was not completely destroying candidate A. Why did they do this? Maybe the person in charge of doing this graphic didn't know data analysis very well, so they made this mistake. Or maybe they had not very good intentions. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. But because I know data, I realized that what they were telling me was not exactly accurate. So knowing data is very, very, very important nowadays. So many companies hire people that know how to work with data. So they can either be data analysts, data scientists, or any other professional that knows how to work with data. So you could be a psychologist that knows how to work with data, or you could be carpenter that knows how to work with data, or whatever it is. Professionals that know how to work with data are highly seeked, and they usually make more money than someone that doesn't know how to work with data. So in a way, data workers are the modern scribes. Are they going to build statues out of us? I don't know. I would like that. I'm still waiting for my statue. But we are very important. But it doesn't have to be this way. Although data scientists and data analysts are very necessary in this economy, anybody could learn data, and everybody should learn how to deal with data, because as I was telling you, data is absolutely everywhere. So yeah, let's see. Let's check the chat. How are we doing? So I saw a question in the chat. So the question says, I recently saw some post AI is running out of training data. Is this true? So I don't know specifically if we are running out of training data. We'll have to see what was exactly being presented, but eventually AI could run out of data. The data is finite in the sense that there's only so many texts, and eventually AI consumed all of them, then it will run out of data. Like, it makes sense because it's not like we have infinite data. It's a lot of data, but it's not infinite. So that could be. So let's see, what else do we have here in the chat? All right, awesome. So I just spent several minutes talking about how important is data literacy. So now the question is, how do we become data literate? What is data literacy? So data literacy is the ability to read, write, translate, and think about data. So basically in this program, you'll learn the language of data. And language is super important. I actually have an anecdote to share. So my first time in Europe, I was visiting Moscow, and where I lived in the US, we didn't have metros, so I was not used to the metro system in Europe. That in Europe, every city has a metro system, and I didn't speak Russian. Russian doesn't even have our own characters. It has different characters. It's a different alphabet. So I didn't know, but when you exit the metro, you have to push this button so the door opens. I thought it would be like a bus, that the bus just opens the door. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. Now that I think about it, I think it's kind of obvious. But at the time, I didn't know. And it was the last metro. It was super cold. I didn't have cash on me, and the metro wouldn't stop. And I was already getting very far from my house, and it was a bad situation. Was I not very smart? That's not true. I'm a smart person, but I didn't know the symbols. I didn't know the characters. If I had known the question, I would have read here, be careful, you have to push the button to open the door. So it's the same thing with anything that you do in life. Even if you're studying math, if you're studying philosophy, if you're studying data, you have to know the symbols. So we're going to teach you here how to read the symbols. So if you feel like sometimes maybe something feels difficult, it might not be that you're not smart. That's never the case. Everyone here is very smart. It's maybe that you don't know the symbols. So ask yourself, what is it that I'm not understanding? And how can I ask clarification for that? So the same way you learn a language, for those of you that speak a second language, you know how hard it is. It's the same thing with the language of data. So we're going to learn how to read, write, translate, and think data. So let's start with reading data. So in order to become proficient at reading data, you need to develop two fundamental skills. So the first one is recognizing those symbols. Symbols go a long way. If I write 2 + 2 like this, absolutely everyone is gonna know, okay, this is 4. Why? Because we've had years and years and years of learning that this symbol means to add 2 numbers, and now we just take it for granted, but we know that symbol. If I wrote something like 2 happy face 2, nobody would know what to do with that. But if I tell you, okay, this happy face is going to act like an addition, then everybody's going to know, okay, it's 4. So we have to learn the specific symbols, and that applies for math, it applies for philosophy, it applies for law, it applies for everything. And of course, here it applies for data. So we need to learn those symbols. So in the case of data, we need to recognize what each chart is telling us, what each table is telling us, what each metric is telling us. And we are going to be learning this throughout this program. Of course, we're not going to learn everything on the first class, so we're going to learn this throughout the program. And the second thing that you need to become proficient at reading data is understanding the relationships between those symbols so they can be connected to create coherent narratives or stories. So going back to the language issue, if I learned what each letter meant what each letter in the Russian alphabet is, I'm still not there because I would be able to read the letters, but I wouldn't know what the word means. So once you put it all together, what does it mean? So it's just like words, when you put words together to create a sentence and create a meaning. So in that sense, data analysis are like stories that need to be read correctly to be fully understood. So similar when you're just reading the newspaper and you need to read correctly to be able to understand what is being said. So we're going to go through some examples to practice or skill to learn how to read data. So we're going to start with dashboards. So you're going to become very familiar with dashboards. We're going to be doing a lot of dashboards here in the program. But those of you that drive, and since you guys are in the United States, it's probably everyone, because in the US, almost everyone needs a car. You guys might be already familiar with a dashboard, a car dashboard. So what is a car dashboard? A car dashboard is telling you data about your driving and your car so you can take actions on the spot. So for example, here you look at the speed and you see, okay, I'm going too fast, I'm going to slow down, or I'm going too slow, I'm going to speed up. So you can quickly look and take a decision and make a decision. Same thing with the gas. You see that the gas is almost out. So you're like, okay, I have to stop soon by the gas station so I can get some gas. Or here, if your car is too hot, you know that you have to go to the mechanic because your car is about to implode. Same thing with the different lights, etc. You can know you might be able to tell that I learned how to drive in Florida because I actually don't know what this one does. But yeah, hence the importance of knowing how to read and what it means. But probably all of you are familiar with dashboards one way or another. So we're going to be looking specifically at dashboards created by data analysts. But now that we have talked about dashboards, you're going to start seeing them everywhere. And I would almost love it if people during the week they see a dashboard and they can send us a picture either in the live chat or in the water cooler to just see examples of dashboards in the real world. But let's look at some dashboards that are created by data analysts, just so you have an idea of how to read them. That's the first thing. But the second thing, so you can see of what you're going to be able to do by the end of this program. So let's start with this first dashboard. So the first dashboard is the IT dashboard. So it's this dashboard. So if you're following along the guide, you can just click on that link. You should be able to open it. If not, let me send this link in the chat so you also have it there for easy access. And okay, so hopefully everyone is there. The tab that we're actually going to be working from is case overview. So click there on case overview. So this is a professional dashboard. It's created on a tool called Tableau. We're going to be talking about Tableau in a little bit. But basically, it's a professional dashboard. In this case, we have this IT dashboard that is going to allow someone working in IT to quickly identify when was the highest number of cases, when did it happen, which case types are the most frequent ones, etc. So here we have several tabs. For now, let's just focus on this tab here, case overview. So we have the title here, tech support. Here we have something that is called a date picker. So for example, if you only wanted data, we have data from 2005 to 2013. So let's say you wanted only data since 2011. You can just play around here. And this dashboard is dynamic, so you can just click around. Feel free to play around. This is published somewhere, so even if you feel like you modified something, you can just refresh the page. You're not actively saving changes onto this, so feel free to play around as much as you want with this dashboard. So for now, we're gonna be working only with this page. And yeah, so we have one visualization here. This one is called weekly cases over time. Notice that this visualization has a clear title, so you know what is the purpose of this visualization. So it's just basically to know how many cases had happened during each week. There's this line that shows all the cases, but also this red line shows the open cases. So people can track, okay, what is it that we need to be doing? Then cases by product. So maybe this was a company. So you can see, okay, this product that is called DSA standard, whatever that is, was the one that had the most number of cases. Then you have cases by origin and you have cases by type. So this is a dashboard. And there's a few questions associated to this dashboard. So the first question is, from the case overview, so we're here. If you're seeing the orange graphics, you just need to click here. But you could also just look at my Zoom screen, whatever is easier for you. So in the tech support section of the dashboard, which week had the highest number of cases. So I'll give you, since it's the first question, let's say 2 minutes. And so you can look at it and answer the question. Well, I feel like 2 minutes is going to be a lot. Let's do 1 minute. So this page, if you're on Codio and you're following along on Codio, here it's this link, so you can just click on this link and you'll get there. But I'll also put it as a comment there for the person that just asked. All right, I see those answers coming in. So the screen in the Zoom, make sure that you're clicking here on case overview, because I think the default, it opens on, I don't know, some other one, but make sure that you click on case overview. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. So the question is, from the case overview, so we're here, case overview, make sure that we're here, and it says in the tech support section, so I guess it's all of this, which week had the highest number of cases? So I find the plot that says weekly cases over time, and you can just do a visual inspection and you would see that this one is the one with the highest peak. So as all of you correctly said in the chat, the week with the highest number of cases was May 6, 2012, with 941 cases, and the status is closed. So yeah, you have it there. Let's go with the next question. What was the highest case origin, and how many cases did it have in total? So I'll also give you 1 minute for that question. Take your time, feel free to click around. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. So I'm showing the questions on the Zoom screen, but they're also here on the Codio guide. So however is easier for you. So what was the question? So the question was, what was the highest case origin? So that's the first part. So here I have case overview, over time, by product, by origin. Okay, so this is the plot I'm gonna be looking at, cases by origin. And how many cases did it have in total? What was the highest one? So the highest one, in this case, something to keep in mind is to check that, for example, this bar so you might be tempted to answer the first one, but you have to take that into consideration. In this case, it is sorted by numbers, so that makes our life easier, but something just to keep an eye out for. So the highest case origin was web, so most cases were coming from the web, and the number is 44,642. So absolutely, yes, what I'm seeing in the chat. I see that maybe some people have questions, maybe it's not super clear, please send those questions so we can know where it's not clear and we can address those questions. All right, cool. So let's go with the third question. So the third question is navigate to the open case workbench. So here you're going to have to do one more click than just looking at this dashboard. What differences do you notice about this and the case overview? So basically you have to click here on open case workbench and click here on case overview. And what differences do you notice? And what additional information is being conveyed? So there's no wrong answers because it's whatever you notice that is different. Whatever information extra you're getting out of this second page. So there's no wrong answers. Feel free to write whatever differences that you see. And then what additional information you're getting here. So I'll give you 2 minutes for that one so you can explore a little bit more. And then we'll share some of those answers in the chat.
2 minutes left. Left. Seconds left. Seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right. So I saw a really good question in the chat. I think it was actually referring to this previous one. So this one said, what was the highest case origin and how many cases did it have in total? And for the web, we said 44,000 cases. But the question that I really liked was by Ben. So Ben asked, how is it that the web number 44,000 cases is higher than the total volume of cases? The total volume of cases, 33,000. So yeah, like 10,000 cases more. How is that possible? So I love that question because that's exactly what a data analyst needs to be doing. He needs to be paying attention and noticing differences in your data and asking yourself, does this data make sense? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer. I didn't create this dashboard. So this is something that if I was working for a company and I was given this dashboard, I would ask that question. Who created this dashboard? Can someone explain this to me? Is it an error or is it something that we're missing? I don't know. I don't know what's the answer here, but that's exactly what a data analyst needs to be doing. The other question that I saw, which was a really good question, I think Who was it? Who was the question by? I don't see the question anymore, but the question was basically, I keep seeing different numbers all the time, and that's how I'm getting answers, different answers. So if you're seeing different numbers, it maybe it's that you're playing with this interactive dashboard. So maybe, for example, you moved here. So it's interactive. So here we're showing the data from 2008 to 2013, and then the different numbers might change here depending on how you click. Or for example, if you click here on, I don't know, this bar, then it filters out the whole website to show only data from this product. So where, if, for example, the web now it's only 19,000, but it's only 19,000 for this specific product. So if at any moment you want to reset, you just gotta double click wherever there's like a blank, and then it resets. So if you're having that issue, that's also part of it. I see another question that is more related to Zoom than the content. If you're not seeing this screen, I'm currently sharing a screen and I'm sharing the questions and the dashboard. If you're not seeing it, maybe at the top of your Zoom, it says screen, presenter screen, Viviana's screen. I'm not sure what it says, but make sure that you're clicking there so you're seeing the presenter screen. And yeah, just make sure that's there. So you should be seeing our lovely cameras, but also a screen. I'm sharing a screen. So maybe that was an issue that some people were having. All right, so now let's go back to question number 3. So question number 3 was, let's check open case workbench versus case overview. So we're working on these two different tabs. And what differences do you see? So I'm going to read some of the answers that we have in the chat. So some people were saying the open case workbench has more in-depth information in regards to case creations, such as creation week, owner, and current status, as well as additional details by case. Another comment said some of the differences is how the information is displayed, how the information is organized, and how it has a little bit more details about each one of the cases. Another difference, a little bit too obvious, the color scheme. Here everything is blue, where here everything is orange. So yeah, that's another difference. Let's see, it gives more details on each individual. Workbench has cases by priority, which we don't really have that in the case overview. Yeah, so all those answers in the chat are really, really good. So thank you everyone for participating. All right, cool. So let's go with our second dashboard. So let's look at this second dashboard. So this dashboard is airline dashboard and is for airlines. So what information is used to determine flight prices? A lot of information. So demand, supply, the price of oil, current weather, maybe holidays. There's a bunch of things that influence price. But let's look at supply and demand from this dashboard. So I'm going to click on it. The link is in your guide if you're following along on Codio. It's just here, so you can just click on it. But also I'll just share the link in the chat, so whatever is easier for all of you. So here we have another Tableau dashboard. So Tableau is just the tool to create dashboards, and one of the many tools. There's many tools. So here, this dashboard has a lot of information in just one page. So we have the title, so airline schedule departing seats from the US, the year 2021, 2021, month 4, so April. And airline schedules are highly uncertain and are revised weekly. So that's just like a warning that whoever created this dashboard probably was this DWU Consulting, put it in there for us. So we have this one about the monthly change. So here we see how many flights we had, domestic, international, grand total. The number last year for that month, the current number for this month. So for example, here we're on month 4, which is April. Is it April? Yes, it's April. So in April last year, we had this number of passengers. This month, so the current April, we have this amount of passengers. And what was the difference between this year and last year? So this year we have 46% more passengers. Here in the month of April. Here we have a nice map. So for example, it's easy for us to determine where the highest number of departing flights happen. So for example, here in Denver, it's a big cluster. Same here in Atlanta. So it's easy to visualize this. Here you have some bar charts to indicate per airline. Here you're indicating per company. So the equipment, I mean, we don't know these companies because we don't work in the airline industry, but let's say we worked in the airline industry, we would know these companies. So these companies are basically companies that create the seats for airplanes. So that's what's happening there and the different destinations. So we have a lot of information there. For me, for my particular taste, I feel like this dashboard is a little bit crowded. It's hard to know where to pay attention, but it is still a good dashboard. So let's go with the questions. So the question is, in January, month 1, what was the percentage change in domestic departing flights? So I'll give you 2 minutes for that one. Feel free to ask questions if you have questions. And if you have the answer, feel free to share it in the chat with us.
Left. Left. Seconds left. Seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right. So what was the question? So the question was, in January, month 1, what was the percentage change in domestic departing flights? So most of you in the chat are saying minus 41.9%. So let's see if you guys are right. So the first thing is in this particular dashboard. So this is going to change from dashboard to dashboard. And once you start creating dashboards, you'll see that this is generated because of the business question. So typically your boss would come and say, hey, I need a dashboard where you can click on a different month and see things by a different month. So this is why this one was designed this way. I don't know for sure, because I don't know personally the person that created this dashboard, but that's probably what happened. Whoever had the business question had this need, and this is why the dashboard was created this way. So in this case, you have to find where do you select the month. Thankfully for us, it's highlighted here. So you just switch to January. So you see that here we have different months. So let's switch to month number 1. So this is January. And then the question is, what was the percentage change in domestic departing flights? So now your task is in this sea of information that you have in front of you to determine what is the piece of data that will allow you to answer this question. So that's why I gave you 2 minutes. Maybe I should have given you 5 minutes. You start looking around the dashboard and see where can I find this answer. So can I find it here in the map? Probably not, because the map is telling me things about each one of the different airports. So I see the change, the percentage change, but per airport. I need like an overview of the US. So here to the left, I have that overview of the US. So here I see, okay, I have the overview. And thankfully, I don't have to do any math because the information is displayed here for me. So it says domestic last year in January, because we have selected here January, I have 81,000 flights. And this month, so the current January, 47,000. So this January compared to the previous January, what's the difference? You could do the math to compute the percentage yourself, or you could just look at this column here that already computed it for you. So in this case, it is minus 41.9%. I saw some people in the chat writing 41.9. Don't forget the minus, because this changes the meaning completely, because basically means that last year we had pretty much twice as much passengers as this year. So the negative is important. If it was flipped, how it was in April, that in April this year we're doing better than last year, this number is positive. So don't forget about that negative. But yeah, good job, everyone. I saw a lot of people getting that number. Let's see. All right, cool. Thank you, Tendai, for putting the answer and highlighting the answer in there. All right, awesome. So great question in the chat. Is Tableau something utilized by Amazon? I don't know, because I don't work at Amazon, but a lot of companies use Tableau. So we'll talk about this in the second part of the lecture, different tools, what tools. But Tableau is one of the most popular ones, and great news, you're going to learn in this program how to utilize Tableau. So let's see. All right, awesome. So we're getting close to the top of the hour. So as I promised, let's do a little break. Let's do a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to drop them in the live chat. I'll address them once we are back. So I'll give it to Juan now.
You can't stop. We're gonna sell.
Okay, perfect. I hope you all enjoyed the break. Now let's continue with our lecture.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So let me share my screen. And there we go. So we're gonna go read, because remember what we're doing today. Today, we are training our data literacy skills, how to speak the language of data. So to be able to become data literate, you need to gain 4 skills: reading data, thinking in data, writing data, and translating data. So we're only doing the first part right now, which is reading data. we read two dashboards before the break, and now we're gonna go with our third dashboard. I wanted to say that I appreciate the cameras on so much. I love seeing the faces. It doesn't feel lonely. I feel like I'm in a live class. So I love that. Thank you so much, everyone, for having that camera on. And I love the people that also have the avatars. It makes it fun. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Let's go with that third dashboard. So this dashboard is published by NASA. So the link is in Codio. I'm gonna share it in the chat so you have it as well. And I'm gonna stall here for a little bit to make sure everyone is here after the break. Maybe someone is running from the bathroom and getting back onto their computers. Yeah, so just stalling a little bit. I guess I can show you here if you're following the Codio guide. You can click here and that'll take you to the dashboard. If not, you can just find the link in the chat as well. So however you prefer. All right, cool. So once you're here, this dashboard is not loaded. How do we get it to look like this? And this is not really data reading skills. It was more like me clicking around and figuring where to turn on this dashboard. So you have to go on indicator, so indicators. Then you have to go on atmosphere. So atmosphere, and find the carbon dioxide from OMI daily. So click on it. And it's a little bit slow. So just give it a few minutes until it loads. If maybe it's not loading for you, you can just look at the Zoom screen and just look from there. So yeah, just given here sometimes. And I love what I'm saying in the chat. There's a few people saying, I have no idea what I'm looking at. I'm not gonna lie, the very first time I saw this dashboard, I was also like, what am I looking at? Because it's not something that we're used to seeing. But that's the beautiful thing about being able to read data. Even if you had never seen this dashboard before, maybe you don't get it at first, but then we can start understanding what it is. So I'm gonna close this window here so we can see it better. It's just the map. So it's the map of the world. So I think it's obvious that it's the map of the world. We see the different countries here. But then the question is, okay, what is this map? So this map shows how much carbon dioxide there is on the atmosphere in the world at any given moment in this specific date. So right now we're in 2022, 02/13, so February 13, 2022. And for example, the first time I saw this dashboard, the first thing I looked for was some kind of legend. So the thing that I was searching for was this thing. So this thing tells me, okay, is the carbon dioxide, so CO2 is carbon dioxide, mean concentration, ppm. And I don't work in the environment, so I don't know what ppm is. So I just Googled, what is ppm? And parts per million is an unit typically used to express the concentration of a substance in something. So basically, yeah, the mean concentration. And the number goes from 408 to 409 is blue. So once I looked at this legend, I think it was a little bit more clear what the map is. Because now I can look at this and say, okay, very red. So this means that the carbon dioxide concentration is very high. And then here is kind of yellow. So it's like okay, I guess. And then here is blue, the further down that you go. So less carbon dioxide concentration. Something else that I would have to do, let's say I just landed a job at NASA as a data analyst. I will have to learn more about carbon dioxide. Is it good? Do we want that number to be up or to be down? So that's one of the cool things about data science and data analytics, that you get to learn about many different topics, because you have to learn about the topic to be able to understand the data. So right now, we can just ignore it, but if we were working at NASA, we would have to learn a lot about CO2, carbon dioxide, and the what does it mean. So hopefully that cleared some answers. Shouldn't it be blue at the top? So let's see, at the top, it doesn't show blue. So that's a good question, because I assume the question might be for the North Pole. So does that mean that the North Pole also has a high concentration of CO2? Do we have the North Pole? Maybe it's that the data is capped here and we don't have information about the North Pole. So that's a good question. That's exactly what a data scientist, data analyst should be asking. Do we have all the data? So in this case, I think the map is just capped and they didn't include the North Pole. But that's a good question. Let's see, what else do we have in the chat, if there's any questions. All right, if you don't have this analysis layer, you can get it by going on indicators and click on atmosphere, carbon dioxide daily. So that's how you get it. For me this morning, it wasn't fully working. Let's see if it's working. It's still not working for me. In theory, you should switch days and see different concentrations, but for me, it's not updating. I'm like stuck in one date. I don't know if for you guys it's working, but if it's not working, that's fine. What basically would happen was that you would go past in time and see how the carbon dioxide concentration has changed over the years. But yeah, it's not working for me. But that's fine, because we can still do an analysis and answer a question using the data that we have so far. So it seems like it's not loading for everyone. Yeah, if it's not loading for everyone, that's not on you. That's on the website. This website is a little bit laggy and slow, but that's fine. So let's look at the question. So the question that we have, let me just open this dashboard that we have here as an example, so you can practice with a different view than the one that I was just showing you. And the question is, oops, how do I center this? There you go. So the question is, on the map, as we mentioned, the redder the area, the higher the concentration of carbon dioxide, and the bluer the area, the lower the concentration. And white/yellow areas are just in the middle. So by looking at this map, so this is a snapshot of December 8th, 2020, so in the middle of the pandemic. Can you detect any interesting patterns from just looking at this map? So I'll give you 2 minutes. There's no wrong answers. I'm just asking you what patterns can you see there. So feel free to share anything that comes to mind.
2 minutes left.
right. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So I saw really interesting comments and questions because that's an important skill of a data analyst to ask questions. So for example, someone asked, why is there a low concentration in in China, right? That's surprising. I don't know the answer, but that's a really good question to ask. Maybe it has something related to being COVID, or maybe something related this to be an area of China not being super industrialized. So that's a great question. A lot of people pointed out that the northern hemisphere has more red, and some hypotheses. So maybe is it that there's more population? Is it that is more industrialized, etc. So actually, one of you, Alex, shared a really cool link. I actually pinned it in the chat. Let me share it again in case it got lost in the sea of comments. But basically, addressing that question in the past about the cap. So the data is not capped, as I said. It's actually that there's that much concentration of carbon dioxide closer to the North Pole, which is a big issue for our environment. So if you go back in time, look how it was in 1884. So basically, this is a better visualization of what we were looking earlier, because the one that we were looking earlier was not loading, but this is the idea. This is what you were seeing. So this is in 1884, and the concentration levels are not, well, this one is not exactly carbon dioxide, but there's probably a correlation between carbon dioxide and temperature. But notice that this one says temperature. And you go on and you see how as the world gets more industrialized, it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. And yeah. And the cool thing about the dashboard that we were looking, is a shame that it's not loading, is that when you would click between, let's see, carbon dioxide, when you would check here during 2020, the first days of the pandemic, that you have them in here, like around March 2020, you would see it going from red to blue, because nobody was working, nobody was doing anything, everybody was at home. So the environment got a little bit of a chance to recover there. But yeah, it's not loading, so we can't see it here. And then this visualization that Alex shared, which is a great visualization, it doesn't show it per day, so it's a little bit hard to notice. But yeah, hopefully that answered those questions related on how do we read this dashboard. Do we feel confident about this dashboard? Are there any questions? It looks like Santa is working really hard. That's a funny comment. All right, cool. No questions. Yeah, for me, the dashboard was also lagging. Sometimes it works wonderfully, sometimes it's a little bit laggy, but what are you gonna do? Call NASA and ask them for a higher quality dashboard. Okay, let's go with the next dashboard. So the next dashboard is from the US Census Bureau data. So in the US, every 10 years, I think it is, the population gets censed. So there's a group of people going home by home, asking questions and getting a profile of the United States, of what's the distribution of our people, what are people doing, all these demographic questions that are super important. And you can actually access that information through this dashboard right here. So I'll send this link in the chat so you have it. And once you're here, what you want to do is click on the United States map. So click on here so you can open up the dashboard. So this is a super useful dashboard because you can see how the US is doing. So for example, the total population of the US in 2020, when it was the last census, the next census is going to be in 2030. The population was 300 million, over 300 million. So here we have it. So here am stalling a little bit, waiting for people to get here to this dashboard. So one of the important things of the census and why everyone needs to be counted when these censuses happen is that the government uses these numbers to make decisions. How many roads do we need to build? How many schools do we need to build? How many hospitals do we need to build? So a lot of decisions are being made on this data. So that's why it's very, very important to participate in the census when the time comes. And that goes for any census. Right now we're looking at the United States Census because we are in the United States. But if we were not in the United States, in any country, the census is very important wherever that may be. All right, cool. So this data is not live. You can see here when this data was collected. So most of it is coming of the big census that happens every 10 years. But here, I guess they do some like small surveys throughout the year, so they don't have to wait 10 years to update the information. So you can see here where the data was obtained. All right, cool. So before I explain the dashboard, I want to let you do some thinking. So by looking at this dashboard and looking at these figures, I have the figures here. If you don't want to load the dashboard, you can see it on my screen as well. You have the figures here. Do you find any of them surprising and why? Or do you find them to be what you expected? So I'll give you 2 minutes for that. And then I'll share some of the answers that you guys write.
2 minutes left. Left. Seconds left. Seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right. So some really, really good comments there in the chat. For me, the one that surprised me and I would like to read more about was the health one. It says 7.9% of the population doesn't have healthcare coverage. I would have thought that percentage would be way higher. So I'd be curious to see how they collected this number, because maybe they're counting different things. I don't know. So I'd be super curious about this number. I thought it was also curious how it depends how you've been exposed to data. It determines your your outcome. Because, for example, someone mentioned in the chat that they thought the number of Latinos in the US is very low. They thought the number was very low. And I thought it was interesting because when I saw this number, I thought it was high. I was like, wow, it's many of us here in the US. What are we doing here? 62 million is almost the size of a country. But someone thought that it was a low number. They thought maybe it would have been higher, that number of Hispanics or Latinos in the US. So that's also something to consider, how your own life experiences might impact the way you perceive data. So I thought that was interesting. The other one that came up quite often was income. And I remember thinking the same thing at first when I saw it. I saw median income was what I saw, and I saw $77,000. And I was like, that seems quite high. Median, that being the income, $77,000, that seems kind of high. But then I realized it said median household income. That number makes more sense, because imagine if you have 10 people in your household, that's like 7K per person. That's not great. But most households don't have 10 people. Most households will have 2, 3, 4 people. So this number makes more sense. So if you thought it was high, keep in mind that it's a household number. And that brings also another good point. For example, I would have liked to see this number normalized per person, because how many people do you have in a household, right? So it would have been nice to see this number normalized per person. But anyway, what else do people say? The number of people that were born in the US versus abroad. I don't see that number. That's probably like if you keep scrolling down. I was only looking at this, but good for looking more into that. And I like the comment that Tendai made about the healthcare, because I said like 7.9, it seems kind of low, that only 8% of the people in the US are not covered by healthcare. I would think it would be higher. Someone was saying that that's probably, I don't know, different things. But I like the comment that Tendai said, because it said, well, 8%, if you do the math out of this almost 332 million people, 8% is still 26 million people without health insurance, which is not great. We will want that number to be 0. So even if the percentage is small, what is the actual number? So I like the way that you are thinking there. What else? In the comments, someone said, I find it interesting and some of it sad. But yeah. Another one that I found interesting was total population and housing. So there's 140 million housing units and 330 million people. So it means that on average, there's like 3 people per house housing unit. So I thought that was interesting. Let's see what else people are saying. All right, cool, awesome. Next question. So for the next question, I also give you 2 minutes, although I think some people already did it. They kept scrolling down and finding more interesting things here. So maybe some of the questions that we had, let's say health, let's keep scrolling down. So according to this, employment, let's see if we can find health, housing, health. So health, well, here it says more stuff about health. Okay, health insurance. population without health insurance coverage. So it's going down from 2013 to 2022. And here we can see exactly the table. All right, cool. So yeah, I'll give you 2 minutes to continue exploring this and see if you find any other interesting pebbles in here.
2 minutes left. Left. Seconds left. Seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right, cool. So I love all the comments that I'm seeing in the chat. Yeah, so I'm sure many of you are gonna go back to this website after class and just fully read it through each one of these charts and information in here. There's a lot of interesting information in here. So data is cool, right? It's nice to read all this data. I saw that some of you already jumped onto the third question. So the third question is find a state and explore it. So for those of you that were not there yet, basically here in the map, you can click on a state. Oh, I was able to click on a state before. Why is it not letting me do that? I think you have to just like scroll all the way. Okay, once you scroll all the way down, then you can click on your state. You can pick whichever state. I'm gonna pick my state, Florida, and you can just say view profile. So for those of you that were still not here, I'll give you 2 minutes so you can explore your state. You can choose any state that you want and see if you find anything interesting.
2 minutes left. left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
All right. I love all the answers in the chat. There was one that I liked. I think it was Kiria. Kiria said, I moved to another state, so I compared the two states and how they were different from each other. So that's a good exercise to compare between states. And you could do so much with this data. You could go, for example, through all the states. There's probably a summarize page somewhere in here. But for example, see which state has the highest percentage of people employed. Which state has the highest percentage of people that speak a second language at home, etc. So it's really cool. And notice that we're not reading a book, we're not reading text, we're reading a dashboard, and we're learning so much from this dashboard. Yeah, awesome. So I was curious about Florida because I live in Florida, and now I was the victim of my own experience because I live in Miami. Well, I used to live in Miami, and in Miami, everyone speaks Spanish. So I thought in Florida, like 60% of people would speak Spanish, but it's only 22%. Probably the further north you go to Florida, the less people speak Spanish. But anyway, all right, awesome. So that was on reading. So now let's talk about writing. So to be able to become data literate, you need 4 skills. Read data, which we just practiced. We read 4 dashboards. We learned different things. And I would encourage you to find dashboards every week and read them because you're going to learn so much stuff, but also you're going to get the sense of how dashboards should look like and how to convey data and just copy the best ideas you see onto your own dashboards. So I would encourage you to continue practicing this skill as you go on to be a data professional. I do it. Every week I try to find some new piece of data to see how they're doing it, what can I learn, etc. And the next skill is write. So what about writing data? So to write data, to create, for example, a dashboard or a data analysis, you're going to need some tools. The first one that we're going to talk about is Excel. So the scribe or Franz McNabb used a papyrus and a pen to be able to write data. Us as data analysts, we are going to be using Excel. So Excel is one of the many tools that we're going to be using. Many of you probably know Excel already. In this course, you don't have to pay for Excel. We're going to be using Excel online, which is completely free, available to everyone. You just need to create an account, and you don't even need to download anything onto your computer. You can just use Excel online. Once we get to the Excel class, we'll show you how to do it. But yeah, you don't need to do much about Excel. It's free, you can access it. So why do we use Excel? So Excel is an excellent tool for data to. You will strongly disagree about this statement in a few weeks, but it's easier to learn than coding, for example. It's very intuitive, and the interface just makes sense. So this means that you just open the program on your computer and you can just click around. Where, for example, in coding, you have to know how to write code. In Excel, even if you don't know how to use Excel, you can just start clicking around and kind of figure it out. So from that perspective, it's easy. It's easy to calculate some sophisticated data quantities in Excel. It's very powerful in that sense. And a lot of data analysts work with Excel. So you go to a company and you're probably going to have to be working on Excel. So yeah, this is what I was saying. Excel, you just open it and you're able to see your data right away, which might seem like a little bit of a weird comment at this point, but once you learn how to code, you don't necessarily see the data right away. You have to code to be able to see the data. So this is nice about Excel. So let's see. What other tools are we going to be using and learning? Dashboards. So that there was a question earlier today about dashboards. So how can we create a dashboard? You can actually create a dashboard on Excel, but that's not the best tool for that task. So you could, but the best tool for that task will be a dashboarding tool. The most popular ones in the market right now are Looker Studio, Tableau, and Power BI. So if you're applying for a data analyst job, chances are that they're going to ask you to know one of the three. You don't have to know the three of them, because they know that if you know Looker Studio, you're going to learn Tableau real quick. Or if you know Power BI, you're going to learn Looker Studio real quick. They're very similar. So once you know one, you know the other one. It's kind of like Excel and Google Sheets. Slightly different, but same thing. So you don't have to worry about learning all of them. In this program, you're going to learn Looker Studio and Tableau to be able to create those dashboards. We have an optional lecture on Power BI. It's not going to be a live session. The reason being that Power BI doesn't work on Macs. So if anybody has a Mac, you wouldn't be able to follow along the lesson. But if you want, there's that resource for you. But we are going to create a dashboard in Looker Studio and a dashboard in Tableau. So we're going to have classes on that. Same thing, you don't have to pay for anything. Looker Studio is free. You create an account, it's online, very easy to use. For Tableau, you can access the free version. There's a paid version. We don't want you to pay for anything. Don't pay it. You can use the free version. You do have to do some things, but when the time comes, we'll give you clear instructions on how to have Tableau on your machine. The Looker Studio, for example, you can go in here. So let me go on Looker Studio. So on Looker Studio, for example, I was recommending earlier, oh, you should practice your skill of reading data and reading dashboards. And maybe some of you are wondering, well, how do I do that? So I'm going to give you the links to the public galleries of Looker Studio. The Looker Studio one is here in the guide, so you have that link, but I'll post it in the chat in a few seconds. And here you can click on all the community dashboards that people have publicly published online. So you can just click on them and do the same exercise that we did here today in class, like, what does this bar mean? What does this color mean? Is there any question I have about this dashboard? So you can do that on your own. Same with Tableau. Tableau has here this public gallery as well. So when I work, what I do is that sometimes I do, I don't know, Tuesdays in the morning, I spend 20 minutes looking at this gallery and seeing and learning different kinds of visualization to become better every day. So let me post these links in the chat so you can do that after class and you can continue practicing. So here's the Looker Studio one. And the Tableau one is not in the guide, but I'll put it here in the chat. Tableau. Here you go. Okay, I just put them in there. All right, and the other tool that you're gonna learn is coding. So you're gonna learn how to code in SQL. SQL is specifically for databases, and then you're gonna learn Python. So Python is super versatile. It's for everything. It's for data analysis. It's for AI. It's for coding apps. You can do a lot of things with Python. Of course, in this program, we're going to focus on data analytics. We're going to do a little bit of data science as well. But yeah, so we're going to learn these tools in the program. All right, cool. So time for a quick question. So what tool is primarily used for working with spreadsheets, but not databases? Yes, it is Excel. So if you're going to be working with spreadsheets, you're going to be using Excel. And I'm with you, Kitty. I'm also a Sheets user, Google Sheets more than Excel. But yeah, the skills are transferable. They're very similar. But I'm with you there. Cool. Okay, so the next skill is working with to be able to work with data is translating your data. So we have talked about reading, writing. What do we mean by translating your data? So what is the purpose of learning a language? To be able to communicate, right? And that's why when we're born as babies, we start picking up the language to be able to communicate our needs. We start saying that we want mama or papa, or we want milk or food, whatever it is. So the purpose of language is to be able to communicate. So you need to learn how to communicate your data findings. So as a data professional, typically companies are going to hire you because you have the technical skills to analyze the data that they have and to extract value out of that data. But you could create the best data analysis in the world, but if you don't know how to communicate that that analysis, is not going to be used. So you need to know how to communicate your findings. So we're going to be doing this in this program all the time. So it's a combination of things. Is how do you present your graphics? How do you talk about your findings? What was the main business insight out of this analysis? So this is something that I actually really like about Correlation One, is that today is a little bit different because it's the first class, but the following classes, you're going to be working on a business case. So you're going to be working on an actual project that you would have to do at work. It's a real example. And so we are not only going to learn the technical skills, but also to connect it back to the business. Why is this valuable to the business? Why is this valuable to anyone? Why would anyone care about this? So we're going to be teaching you that as well. So it's not enough to be really good as a technical person. As a data professional, you also need to work on communicating those findings that you make. So here we have a really cool example. I'm going to play a YouTube video. I'm only going to play the first 5 minutes. You can watch the rest at home. So it's by a scholar. His name is Hans Rosling, and he's known for being an excellent communicator. So you can see what I'm talking about, how to communicate data nicely. So let me play this video.
To promote About 10 years ago, I took on the task to teach global development to Swedish undergraduate students. That was after having spent about 20 years together with African institutions studying Hungary and Africa. So I was sort of expected to know a little about the world. And I started in our medical university, Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called Global Health. But when you get that opportunity, you get a little nervous. I thought these students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system. So I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came. And one of the questions from which I learned a lot was this one: which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? And I put them together so that in each pair of country, one has twice the child mortality of the other. And this means that it's much bigger the difference than the uncertainty of the data. I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I did it so I got a confidence interval 0.8 right answer out of 5 possible. That means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right half of the cases. But the students are not there. The problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So this is where I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This country over here is China. And this is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Huh? Well, I first discovered that their textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family, and third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still 2 types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We start the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green Latin American countries, they are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here, they still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there. But now Bangladesh, it's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world.
All right, and I'll put the link in the chat in case you guys want to watch afterwards. It's also in the training site. But yeah, I love what people are saying in the chat already. How he's charismatic. He uses his personality, which is a little bit of humor, to convey an idea. So, for example, the chimpanzee example, the monkey example, he could have said something boring as like, oh yeah, statistically, if you just chose an answer randomly, you would get 2.5 of the questions right. But he created this analogy with the chimpanzees, which made it more engaging and entertaining. So this is what we mean by translating data. So being able to communicate the findings. Do you have to use humor? You don't. If it's part of your personality, definitely use it. But just to make sure that you're communicating clearly and getting that message across. So we're going to be practicing that skill in this program. And the last skill is to think about data. So you have reading. We read the different dashboards, writing, the different tools that we'll learn to use to be able to write data. Translating is the act of communicating, and then thinking about data is stopping for a second and thinking, why are we doing this? Are we answering a research question, a business question, maybe a personal question. Maybe you're like, I wonder how much money do I spend monthly at Target? That could be the birth of a data project, just asking a question. So you have to do some thinking about your data project. So typically it involves having a good question that you want to answer. Typically at work is going to come from the business, so a business question. If you work at a research place, is going to come as a research question. But it could also be a personal question, like, I wonder how many TV shows have I watched the last year? So that's that. Any question that you want to answer can lead you to a data project. Determining what data you need to be able to complete the project, and avoiding issues like, for example, the bar chart I shared earlier today. So avoiding pitfalls and false beliefs. And know that you need a lot of data to be able to answer questions. So if you have only one row of data, that's not going to be enough. So making sure that your data is representative of the population the project is going to serve. All right. So in your Codio, you'll see a knowledge check here at the end. It'll show you the right answer once you answer it. So I'll leave that for you guys to try it out to make sure that everything is right. But if you have any questions, of course, put it in the chat. And that was all for today. So I hope you guys like this class, that you're ready to read, write, translate,